Look at the shadow on the ground beneath your feet. Solid, dark, real, cast by your body blocking sunlight. Now imagine that same shadow stretching across space, the shadow of Earth blocking sunlight, the shadow of the moon creating an eclipse. These seem like the same phenomenon, just larger scale. But they are not. Shadows in space do not exist the way you think they do. They are not darkness traveling through the void. They are optical illusions created by geometry and the finite speed of light. And when you understand why, your entire conception of darkness, light, and the structure of space itself will be permanently destroyed. Shadows are so familiar that we never question them. An object blocks light from a source. The region behind the object where light cannot reach becomes dark. That darkness is the shadow. Simple, obvious, elementary. On Earth, shadows work exactly this way. Stand in sunlight and your body blocks photons from the sun. The ground behind you receives no direct sunlight. That region is darker than the surrounding illuminated ground. The darkness is the shadow. It moves when you move. It lengthens as the sun sets. It disappears when you move out of the sunlight. The shadow is a physical phenomenon with clear boundaries and observable properties. But extend this intuition to space, and everything breaks down. Consider Earth's shadow. Earth blocks sunlight on the side away from the sun. There is a cone-shaped region behind Earth where sunlight is blocked. This is Earth's shadow, right? The moon passes through this shadow during a lunar eclipse. The shadow is so real that it darkens the moon, creating the dramatic eclipse we observe. Except shadows in space are not like shadows on the ground. The darkness you think is traveling through space is not a thing at all. It is not a substance. It is not a region with special properties. It is not an entity that exists independently. Shadows in space are pure geometry. They are the absence of something rather than the presence of anything. And this distinction is crucial. Let me explain what is actually happening when we talk about shadows in space. Light consists of photons, particles of electromagnetic radiation that travel at the speed of light. When the sun emits photons, they radiate outward in all directions. Most photons travel through empty space without interacting with anything. Some photons encounter objects. When a photon hits an object, several things can happen. It can be absorbed, its energy converted to heat. It can be reflected, bouncing off in a different direction. It can be transmitted through if the object is transparent. But one thing the photon cannot do is pass through an opaque object unchanged. Earth is mostly opaque to visible light. Photons from the sun that encounter Earth either get absorbed or reflected. They do not pass through. This means that on the far side of Earth from the sun, there is a region of space that sunlight photons cannot reach geometrically, not because something is blocking them in that region, but because their straight-line paths from the sun intersect Earth, and they are absorbed or reflected before reaching that region. The shadow of Earth is not a thing in space. It is a geometric description of which regions of space can be reached by straight-line photon paths from the sun and which cannot. The region behind Earth cannot be reached by direct sunlight because Earth is in the way. That is all a shadow is, a description of geometry, not an object or substance. Now consider what happens during a lunar eclipse. The moon orbits Earth. Occasionally, the moon passes through the region of space where sunlight is geometrically blocked by Earth. When this happens, the moon receives no direct sunlight. It appears dark or reddish, illuminated only by sunlight refracted through Earth's atmosphere. We say the moon is in Earth's shadow, but nothing is traveling from Earth to the moon. No darkness is projected across space. The moon is simply in a region where photons from the sun cannot reach it directly because Earth blocks the geometric paths. The shadow is not an entity. It is a description of the absence of direct illumination. Here is the crucial point. Shadows do not propagate. They do not travel. They do not move through space at any speed. Shadows are instantaneous geometric configurations determined by the positions of the light source and the blocking object. When you wave your hand in sunlight, the shadow on the ground moves. It seems like the shadow is traveling across the surface, but the shadow is not moving. What is happening is that different regions of the surface are entering and exiting the geometric configuration where direct sunlight is blocked. The shadow at one location disappears, and a shadow at another location appears. These are not the same shadow moving. They are different regions successively becoming shadowed. The distinction becomes clear when you consider the speed of shadow motion. If you wave your hand fast enough, the shadow on a distant wall can move faster than the speed of light. This does not violate relativity because the shadow is not a thing. It is not carrying information or energy. It is just a pattern of illumination changing. Different parts of the wall are being illuminated or not illuminated as your hand moves, but no object is traveling from one part of the wall to another. In space, the same principle applies, but the confusion is worse because there is no surface for the shadow to fall on. When we say Earth casts a shadow into space, we mean that there is a cone-shaped region behind Earth where sunlight does not directly reach. But this cone is not filled with darkness. It is simply empty space that happens not to be illuminated by the sun because Earth blocks the direct paths. If you placed a detector in Earth's shadow, it would measure fewer photons from the sun. If you moved the detector out of the shadow, it would measure more photons. But the detector is not measuring darkness. It is measuring the absence of photons from a specific direction. Other photons from stars, reflected light from planets, cosmic microwave background radiation, all of these are still present in the shadow. The shadow only refers to direct sunlight. This brings us to another misconception. Shadows are not regions devoid of light. Even in Earth's shadow, space is not completely dark. There is still light from countless stars. There is reflected light from the moon. There is the faint glow of the zodiacal light from dust in the solar system. Earth's shadow only blocks direct sunlight. All other light sources continue to illuminate the region. The moon during a total lunar eclipse is not in complete darkness. It is dimly illuminated by sunlight that has been refracted through Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere bends some sunlight around Earth, scattering it into the shadow region. This refracted light is reddish because Earth's atmosphere scatters blue light more than red light, the same reason sunsets are red. The moon appears red during an eclipse not because of any property of the shadow, but because of this refracted red light. Now let us consider the speed of shadows in space. When Earth rotates, the line between day and night, the terminator, moves across the surface. This is not a shadow in space. This is the boundary between the region of Earth illuminated by the sun and the region in Earth's own shadow. The terminator moves at roughly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator due to Earth's rotation, but the terminator is not a thing moving across the surface. It is the boundary of a geometric configuration. Different locations on Earth enter and exit the illuminated hemisphere as the planet rotates. The terminator is not traveling. It is a line that exists instantaneously based on the relative positions of the sun and Earth. Similarly, when the moon passes through Earth's shadow during an eclipse, the shadow does not move to intercept the moon. The moon moves through space on its orbit. At a particular moment, the moon's position coincides with the geometric region where Earth blocks sunlight. The moon enters the shadow not because the shadow traveled to the moon, but because the moon traveled to the region defined as the shadow. This is not semantic quibbling. This distinction has physical consequences. If shadows were things that propagate, they would have to obey relativity. They would carry information or energy. They would interact with matter in specific ways. But shadows are not things. They are absences. And absences do not propagate or interact. They are purely geometric descriptions. Consider a thought experiment. Suppose the sun suddenly vanished, not exploded, not dimmed, just instantly ceased to exist. What would happen to Earth's shadow? In the picture where shadows are entities, you might think Earth's shadow would disappear when sunlight stops, and this disappearance would propagate outward at the speed of light. After 8 minutes, when the lack of sunlight reaches Earth, Earth's shadow would vanish. But this is confused thinking. Earth's shadow does not exist as an entity that can vanish. Earth's shadow is a geometric region defined by straight lines from the sun blocked by Earth. When the sun vanishes, there are no more photons being emitted. After 8 minutes, the last photons from the sun reach Earth and pass by. After that, there is no sunlight anywhere in the solar system. There is no shadow because there is no light to cast a shadow. The shadow does not propagate or disappear. The configuration of light in the solar system changes, and with it, the geometric description we call a shadow becomes meaningless because there is no longer a light source to define it. Another way to see that shadows are not real entities is to consider their speed. As I mentioned, you can make a shadow move faster than light. Point a laser at the moon, wave the laser back and forth. The spot of light on the moon moves as you wave the laser. The shadow adjacent to the illuminated spot also moves. If you wave the laser fast enough, the shadow on the moon's surface can move faster than the speed of light. This does not violate relativity because the shadow is not a thing. No information travels faster than light. No energy is transmitted faster than light. What is happening is that different parts of the moon's surface are being illuminated sequentially. The region that was just illuminated becomes shadowed as the laser points away, and a new region becomes illuminated. This is not motion of a single entity. It is a succession of different regions entering and exiting illumination. The geometry of shadows in space also depends on the finite speed of light in a subtle way. When the moon passes into Earth's shadow, it does so because at that moment, Earth is geometrically between the moon and the sun, but the sunlight reaching the moon was emitted 8 minutes ago. The sun's position in the sky as we see it is where the sun was 8 minutes ago, not where it is now. Similarly, Earth's shadow is determined by where Earth is now blocking light that was emitted in the past. This creates a complex geometry. The shadow of Earth at any moment is defined by Earth's current position and the sun's past position from which light is currently arriving. If the sun moved instantaneously, Earth's shadow would not change until light from the sun's new position reached Earth 8 minutes later. The shadow configuration is determined by light travel time and geometric relationships across space-time, not just instantaneous spatial positions. In general relativity, this becomes even more interesting. Light follows null geodesics, paths through curved space-time. In the presence of strong gravity, space-time is curved and light paths bend. Earth's shadow in general relativity is not a perfect cone. It is distorted by the curvature of space-time around Earth and the sun. The shadow is defined by the null geodesics emanating from the sun that are blocked by Earth. Near a black hole, shadows take on bizarre properties. A black hole's event horizon is a surface from which light cannot escape. This creates a shadow in the sense that light from behind the black hole is absorbed and cannot reach an observer in front, but the shadow is distorted by the extreme space-time curvature. Light passing near the black hole bends around it. The event horizon telescope images of black hole shadows show this effect. The dark region in the center is the black hole's shadow, surrounded by the photon ring where light orbits the black hole multiple times before reaching us. But even this shadow is not a thing in space. It is a geometric feature of space-time. The dark region is where no light reaches us because any light emitted from that region or passing through it falls into the black hole. The shadow is a description of the causal structure of spacetime, not an object occupying space. Now let us address why shadows seem so real on Earth. On Earth, shadows have sharp boundaries, they move predictably, they darken surfaces, they seem substantial. Why do space shadows feel different? The answer is context and medium. On Earth, sunlight is not just direct photons from the sun. There is scattered light from the atmosphere, reflected light from surfaces, diffuse illumination from the sky. A shadow on the ground is darker than the surrounding area because the direct sunlight is blocked, but the diffuse illumination remains. The contrast creates a visible shadow. In space, there is no atmosphere to scatter light. There is no medium to create diffuse illumination. Light from the sun is harsh and direct. Regions not directly illuminated by the sun are illuminated by starlight and reflected light from other objects, but these are much dimmer. The contrast is extreme. Directly illuminated areas are brightly lit. Shadowed areas are nearly dark. This extreme contrast makes shadows in space seem more dramatic. During a lunar eclipse, the moon goes from bright to very dim. But the dimming is not because darkness invades the moon. The dimming is because the moon is no longer receiving direct sunlight and is only illuminated by faint refracted light through Earth's atmosphere. Astronauts on the moon experience shadows very differently than on Earth. On Earth, even in shadow, there is enough diffuse light to see clearly. On the moon, shadows are pitch black because there is no atmosphere to scatter light. Step into shadow, and you see nothing except starlight and reflected light from nearby surfaces. The contrast is so extreme that cameras struggle to capture both illuminated and shadowed regions simultaneously. But even these sharp, dark lunar shadows are not entities. They are regions geometrically blocked from direct sunlight. The darkness is the absence of photons from a specific source, not the presence of a shadow substance. The illusion that shadows in space are real entities comes from our linguistic and conceptual framework. We use the word shadow as a noun. We say the shadow of Earth or the shadow of the moon, as if shadows are things that can be possessed or cast. But shadows are not things. They are geometric descriptions of light blockage. A more accurate language would say the moon is geometrically blocked from direct sunlight by Earth, rather than the moon is in Earth's shadow. But this is cumbersome. So we use shadow as shorthand, and the shorthand creates the illusion that shadows are entities rather than geometric configurations. In physics, we must be precise. Shadows are not propagating entities. They do not travel at any speed. They do not carry energy or information. They cannot move faster than light because they do not move at all. They are static geometric features determined instantaneously by the positions of light sources and blocking objects. When we see a shadow in space, we are seeing a region that is not illuminated by a specific light source because another object blocks the geometric paths. That is all. No darkness travels through space. No shadow substance fills the void. Just photons that arrive or do not arrive based on whether their paths are blocked. The concept of shadows becomes even more abstract in quantum mechanics. Photons are quantum particles. They do not have definite paths until measured. A photon emitted from the sun is in a superposition of all possible paths through space. When the photon is detected, the path is determined by the detection event, not by a classical trajectory the photon followed. In this quantum picture, Earth's shadow is not a blockage of classical paths. It is a region where the probability of detecting a photon from the sun is very low because most of the quantum amplitudes for paths from the sun to that region destructively interfere or are absorbed by Earth. The shadow is a feature of the quantum wave function of the electromagnetic field, not a geometric blockage of particles. But even in this quantum description, the shadow is not an entity. It is a feature of probability distributions. Photons arrive or do not arrive at different locations with different probabilities. The shadow is where arrival probability from a specific source is low, so shadows in space are illusions, not optical illusions in the sense that they deceive our senses, but conceptual illusions. We think of shadows as things because our language and intuition treat them as things, but physics reveals they are not things at all. They are descriptions of geometric configurations and probability distributions. They are absences, not presences. They are patterns, not substances. Understanding this changes how we think about light and darkness in space. Darkness is not a thing that exists. Darkness is the absence of light, and absence is not an entity. It is a description of what is not there. Space is full of electromagnetic radiation. Photons from countless sources fill every region. What we call darkness is just a region where photons from one particular source are not arriving because of geometric blockage. The next time you see an image of Earth from space with the shadow side dark, remember that the darkness is not a thing occupying that region. It is simply the half of Earth not currently receiving direct sunlight. The darkness is absence, and absence is not a substance. It is a concept, a geometric description, an illusion of our language. Shadows in space are illusions, real in the sense that the geometric configurations they describe are real, but not real as propagating entities with independent existence. And recognizing this distinction is essential to understanding how light, geometry, and reality actually work in the cosmos.